Hey everybody, welcome to this week's service pack. This is Palm Sunday. If you have no idea what that means, no problem. I'm going to clue you in just a little bit about lots of that. We've got some really cool stuff for you today, some updates from Dar. The band recorded several pieces, and I'm going to pick some of those for you today that kind of fit with what I'm talking about. And I'll lead you through a meditation and a teaching after that. So anyway, fasten your seatbelts and let's go.
Morning Crosswalk, or should I say good afternoon or good evening. Whenever you've chosen to come online and check us out, thank you for choosing that and taking the time to go through and see all the great things that's going on at Crosswalk. So I want to encourage you to go and send us an email at info@crosswalknapa.org, and we can get you signed up for what we call the Crosswalk Connection. You will get an email, and it's going to give you all the announcements of things that I've told you about today, but it's also going to give you links to join in on Zoom meetings. And you will need to download the app on your computer called Zoom, and it's got that little logo, which you see on the slide. And you're going to download that app, and then you'll go to the Crosswalk Connection email, and there'll be a link on there where you can click on the link and go directly into that Zoom meeting at the time it's going on. You have to go pretty close to sign on, but they'll let you in so that you can be part of this. I've had people say to me, oh no, I don't want to be on a camera, you know, cameras make you look heavy, la la la. Anyway, just want to let you know you don't have to turn on the camera. You can leave the camera off, and there will be a little square, a little black square with your name on it, so they know that you're there and that you're part of the conversation. So just want to encourage you to do that. So the first Zoom that we have set up, we've been doing this for a bit now, is on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock noon, and it's our praxis group. So they've been getting together. It's led by Pastor Pete, and they're getting together and they're talking about things that are going on in their life and what they're feeling. So it's integrating deep faith into real life, and with all that we have going on, it's great to stay connected with other people. The next one I want to encourage you to join is Virtually Together. It's going to be on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. This is when we were doing Experiencing the Heart of Christianity, and we just finished that last Wednesday, but we knew it was important to still stay connected. So we want to invite all of you to come and join us on Wednesday nights for Virtually Together at 7 p.m. This is when you can get your dinner together, get your beverage, and join us. Same with Praxis. You can grab your lunch and grab a beverage and join in. It works really well using Zoom. So the next one is not on Zoom, but I am encouraging you to join us on Thursday at 7 p.m. on the CrossWalkNapa Facebook page. Look for the Love is Bigger logo on the correct Facebook page, and join us on Monday, Thursday at 7 p.m. A little prep ahead of time, grab something and have it available so that you can do communion together with us. We did this last night at the Experiencing the Heart of Christianity, and it worked out really well for us all to be together, to have communion together. But it does take a little bit of prep, so be prepared for that. The next one is a Zoom, and it's going to be the virtual dinner group, and it's held normally at Fred Teeter's house, but he will be there, and he will be on Zoom. And it will be Monday, April 13th at 6 p.m. Again, grab your dinner, grab your beverage, and join in on the conversation. The last one is the men's group. So I want to encourage the men who normally get together for the men's breakfast, and any of you men that want to join in, that would be great. It'll be on Saturday, April 18th at 8 a.m. And again, grab your breakfast, grab your cup of coffee, whatever you want, and join in the conversation. And next week, you'll be hearing more about Fuel, because we're going to be doing the women's ministry Fuel the same way. So join in some of these groups and get connected with other crosswalkers. It's a great way to stay connected. And then I also want to remind you that we're doing a thing, or let you know that we're doing this thing called Kids Connect Moment, and it's going to be on the CrossWalkNapa.org website. You're going to go on there at 10 o'clock on Sunday, and there's going to be some resources for you and some ways for the kids to get connected. So we're pretty excited about having this opportunity. So I hope you take advantage of that, and especially if you've got kids, where the kids can connect together. So it's pretty fun. And then I want to remind you, every time that I try to celebrate Crosswalk and all the things that Crosswalk's involved in, I just want to share with you, we are still active on the front lines. Pete and I are doing everything we can to be as safe as possible, but we're doing what we can to help. And I do want to let you know that we had a conversation with the county, and we decided to not do our food distribution this month. We are encouraging people to go over to the food bank and pick up food from them, since they're already on the grounds doing this. But I also want to share with you things that have happened that I serve on the Food Access Committee, and we've gotten a call several times from Brandon Garner, who works through homeless outreach through Napa Police Department. And they're encouraging everybody, as you know, to shelter in place or shelter at home. Well, when you're homeless and you live in a tent, in a camp, it makes it difficult for you to go out and get food on a regular basis. So he's been coming by and picking up cases of soup and cases of chili, cans of fruit, jars of peanut butter, crackers, granola bars, whatever we have. We've been setting him up so that he can go out to these camps and give people food, so that they will stay at their camps and hopefully not either get exposed or expose others. So I just want to share that with you and let you know that we are still serving in every way possible here at Crosswalk. And to let you know that you can still support our Crosswalk food pantry, because we are getting food from our pantry to serve these places where there's a gap. I also got a call from Napa Food Bank. They have been delivering toilet paper to their seniors. They have been trying to get toilet paper out to the seniors who don't have any, and they posted that they only had one case and they needed more. I had just gotten in an order from our janitorial company, and so I called them up and told them to come and get a case of toilet paper so that they can get toilet paper to all their little seniors this weekend. So just wanted to let you know about that and just celebrate Crosswalk and all that Crosswalk does and how we step up wherever we see that there is a gap. And if you hear of anything, any ways that Crosswalk can help, please let us know that. But I also want to encourage you to support Crosswalk. We have 3 ways that you can do that. You can give online, or you can give by text message, or you can mail it. We do have an arrangement with the mailman that when he sees my truck in the parking lot, he will drop off our mail, or I go to the post office and pick it up. Staying safe the whole time, but we do get our mail. So just want to encourage you to continue supporting Crosswalk and all the things that Crosswalk does, and just to let you know how much we appreciate that. And just want you guys to know how much we appreciate your support and what we do, and I hope you get connected through some of these community groups. But the other thing I wanted to tell you is I want you to look forward. We're going to be getting information out about how we're going to be celebrating Easter together. So expect that to come in the future. But in the meantime, we wish you safety and health in the days and times ahead of us. We know that this is going to be for a season, and I hope you're learning through this and finding out what's really important in life. So stay healthy, stay well. God bless.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down fast till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Before I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of
for today's meditation, we're going to go back to the beach. It's supposed to be a rainy day today and a little chilly. So let's go somewhere tropical. So we'll go back to that beach that I took you to last week. This is a different beach, by the way, than is on my Zoom meetings. If any of you have Zoomed with me over the last few weeks. I don't know where this was, but anyway, it's beautiful. And so let me guide you through this, but here's a different framework for this. I came across this poem that was written by somebody who was deeply in love with God many centuries ago. And this is what this person said. "Oh God, if I worship you in fear of hell, burn me in hell. If I worship you in hope of paradise, shut me out from paradise. But if I worship you for your own sake, do not withhold me from your everlasting beauty." What an incredible, insightful way to think about relationship with God. That it is that pure, that it is all about our love of God and our experience of God and our recognition of God's beauty and splendor. And we don't come to God because we're the only thing we want is relief from our fear of some terrible thing. And we don't come to God solely because we want things to turn out good in the end, but we want God for God. That somehow this person who discovered that God was enough. In fact, more than enough. And wanted to just declare that. So as we go into this meditation, I hope that's kind of your foundation as we go into this. That this God who we're trying to be quiet and still for is one who is worth it. When we do meditation, it is an opportunity for us to embrace the silence, to be still enough and know that God is with us. That's why we do it. It's a healthy thing to do. It's a good thing to do. It's healthy for us physically, emotionally, mentally, in every possible way. And so let's just do this. So if you can sit comfortably in a chair where you're upright and your spine is pretty straight, now you're comfortable, your hands are comfortable, your feet are comfortable. Just close your eyes and get in touch as you take a couple deep breaths. Get in touch with what's going on with your body, your emotional state, your mental state. Offer any prayers you have to God right now. Just get them off your chest so they're not taking up any brain space. And as you settle in, repeat after me. May I be secure in the love of God. May I be open to learning. May I be willing to serve. May I be quick to grace. May I be fully present each moment. May I be conscious of God. And may I be renewed. Oh God, if I worship you in fear of hell, burn me in hell. If I worship you in hope of paradise, shut me out from paradise. But if I worship you for your own sake, do not withhold from me your everlasting beauty. Amen.
It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. When peace like a river of this glorious thought. My sin not in part, but in whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight, and the clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul.
Well, here we are in Palm Sunday. Unlike any other Palm Sunday I've ever experienced in my lifetime. I've been a pastor for about 25 years, and I've had some very cold Palm Sundays, snowy Palm Sundays, rainy Palm Sundays, but never a Palm Sunday where I haven't been in church. Probably for most, if not all, of my life, and how quickly things change. Am I right? I remember when I was in high school over 30 years ago now, and my buddy and I would lift weights in my basement, and we would never spot each other until our third and final set on the bench press. And so there I was, and some of you are going to, call me out on this, but I'm no kidding. So there I was on my 10th rep of my second set, and my arms, 2/3 of the way up, went to jelly. They totally gave out on me. And 225 pounds dropped on my face, right here. There was a lot of blood. There were stitches, and I still have a scar to remind me of what happened that day. How quickly things can change. About 20 years ago, I was driving in my car up in Pope Valley. Actually, I was lost, and did a U-turn and was making my way back this real windy road, and all of a sudden a deer jumped out, and I overreacted, oversteered, went up an embankment, rolled my car. I had a sunroof in my car. The sunroof blew out, and it left my head exposed to drag along the pavement. There was a lot of blood. Eventually, there were a lot of stitches and staples and a scar. How quickly things can change. Just like that. About 10 years ago, I was doing some pull-ups in my garage, and I had this makeshift kind of Bush League pull-up bar that I fashioned. And it was really Bush League. And I was on my final rep of just my first set, I think number 10 or something like that. And I was about 3/4 of the way up, and my makeshift chin-up bar failed. And down I fell and landed on the small of my back. And for the next 8 months, I had unbelievably painful sciatica. which led to surgery, which led to some blood, stitches, and a pretty handsome scar in my L5-S1 region. How quickly things can change in the blink of an eye. It's all different. I bet you've got stories like this. When everything was going fine, and then all of a sudden calamity hit. And I bet we could take some turns telling stories. And maybe that's one thing you could do after this teaching is talk about when everything seemed to change. And sometimes they're bad things. Sometimes it's like me, accidents happen and it changes your course, trajectory for some time. Sometimes they're life changers. Sometimes you're in a horrible accident and it literally changes what's going to happen for the rest of your life. Sometimes it's a little different than that. Sometimes you get a results from a health test and they're not good, and it's going to change how you think about everything from that point forward. Sometimes it's a pink slip from work. Sometimes it's divorce papers that you've been served. The list goes on and on and on. Sometimes they're good things though, right? Sometimes the good things are like, you graduate from high school, and that does change everything. Or you graduate from college and now you've got this degree that's going to open up some doors. Sometimes you fall in love and all of a sudden everything changes. You see the world differently. Your heart's full, you're hopeful, and all that. Sometimes fertility happens and you get pregnant and you want to be pregnant. And that child is delivered and now all of a sudden you have a baby. And for a brief moment, it's the most wonderful thing ever. And then you realize how much work it is and everything changes all over again. And then they grow through their stages and things change and change and change and change and change and change. And you tell yourself how quickly things change. And then they're graduating from high school and college and becoming adults and going on with their life. How quickly things can change. And we're in one of those moments right now, aren't we? Where just a number of weeks ago, we can still count them on two hands. A lot of us knew about COVID-19, but we didn't really know about COVID-19. It was something we knew was happening other parts of the world, but hadn't really come and infected us yet or affected us. And now it's leading every news headline. Now it is consuming us and feels at times like it's destroying us. And it's one of these things like just a few weeks ago when we were out and about and able to enjoy ourselves and go wherever we wanted to go and not think twice about it. And now, here we are, not able to worship together the way we'd like to, the way we want to. How quickly things can change. How quickly things can change. Well, Jesus was not a stranger to this phenomenon. Jesus was a full-on human being. Sometimes we over-spiritualize Jesus and put a little too much of God on him so that he's not really that human anymore. But I am absolutely convinced this guy was totally human, and he knew what the human life experience was all about. In fact, this week that we celebrate, we call this week Holy Week, starts with today, Palm Sunday, is an example of how Jesus understood the complexities of life and this humanity thing. So on Palm Sunday, if you're not familiar with why we call it that, this is the week of Passover, which was a deeply loved and a very important Jewish holiday. And a lot of people would make a pilgrimage back to Jerusalem in ancient Israel to celebrate the Passover, which remembers the people of Israel being redeemed in the Exodus event that you've probably seen the movie for. And this Passover is that Passover event that led to the Exodus to get the people of God moving toward the Promised Land. So anyway, Jesus was going with a lot of his disciples down to Jerusalem from the northern part of the country. And a lot of his fans knew that he was there and knew that he was coming in. And so when he it finally became clear to them that he was on his way, they lined the streets on the way into Jerusalem, like both sides. Just imagine huge crowds were on either side of the street. And to really make it a fanfare type thing, they had some palm branches that they were waving around to celebrate Jesus being there. And they would also kind of rolled out the red carpet. Nobody thought to bring a red carpet, so they took their coats off their back and their cloaks, and they put them on the ground as kind of a sign of, you're a really big deal and we want to treat you like royalty because we kind of think you are. And so they did all this fanfare for him. But the thing is Jesus knew that they were probably going to do something like this. So he also wanted to make a statement back to them and back to the authorities who were paying attention to what was going on. Now, he had a choice of how he would make his entrance. His fans had a choice of what they wanted to do for Jesus' entrance, and Jesus had a choice too. And he could have just walked in and just nodded his head, hey, thanks, guys, it's really neat. You look a little silly without your coats, but that's okay. Could have done that, but he didn't do that. He also could have chosen to ride in on a horse. He could have borrowed a horse maybe that was used for the temple guard, kind of a war horse, kind of a amazing beast of a creature, and gone in, which would have looked like a very kingly type thing to do. But he chose a different route. He borrowed a donkey, a lowly donkey, and rode into the city on a donkey. And while the people are cheering and all this, he's just probably smiling and just kind of like, look what I'm riding here, man. You guys expected me to come in on a Hummer, and I decided to come in on a Herbie. So that's the tone. And he did that on purpose because Jesus wasn't trying to be the Messiah type that they wanted him to be. He came as a humble servant of God. And he had something to say about this. And his fans got it. And he had a great fan base. His fans mostly hailed from northern Israel, which is where Jesus grew up and did most of his ministry around the Sea of Galilee. The sea is still there today, and people are still catching fish and doing stuff. And Jesus grew up there, and he knew a lot about this whole things can change quickly kind of an experience. In fact, there's still a lot of mystery and ongoing debate about what exactly was going on in Jesus and his life and what made him and all that. And I'm not exactly sure either. There's a lot that's still mired in mystery. But here's what I do know for sure. That something happened in this guy's life where he woke up and he had some kind of an awakening experience where all of a sudden, around 30 years old, he saw everything differently. And he was connected to God in a different way, and people could recognize it on him. There was a charisma about him that apparently wasn't there in the same way as before. And it was dramatic, and it was obvious. He was woke. And it changed everything. Talk about how quickly things can change. Well, one moment, this guy is a day laborer hanging out in the Home Depot parking lot, just hoping to get a job somewhere for the day, to bring home some food for mom and his siblings, and hoping for the best. And the next day, or the next moment anyway, the next season, he is packing the local amphitheater out. Thousands of people are coming to hear what this guy has to say because he is so woke. And the kind of things that he had to say were pretty profound. He's in the Jewish tradition, and everything that he had to say really was born out of the Jewish tradition. In fact, a good friend of mine, Niles Goldstein, rabbi here in town, he recognizes Jesus at minimum as this Jewish reformer that came to shed some new light on some new ways of thinking about Judaism, which were healthy and good. And a lot of the things that Jesus had to talk about were right in line with what some scholars were saying back then, and some other rabbis of high regard were saying. But coupled with those insights, he also had this amazing life that was totally transformed. He was no longer confined to the label of being a day laborer, of being very poor, of being very really destitute. Now he had something else going on, and people recognized it, and they came in droves to hear him talk about this way of God, which he was so full of. And so when he would speak about this, he would talk about a reversal of things, that the way that the world sees reality really isn't the way it really is, that somehow we are immersed in the presence of God. It's kind of weird. We tend to think of God and prayer as up there somewhere, and we need to pray to get God to come down here and help us out. But Jesus was talking more about how God is everywhere, and the kingdom of God is among us and even in us. And it's like we need to wake up to this reality that we don't need to wait for God. It's like we need to wake up to the reality of God that's right here. And everything that Jesus was talking about was validated by the things that he did with his life. The Spirit of God just flowed through him in powerful ways. It's like he ebbed and flowed with the Spirit of God and was just kind of, I don't know, a conduit for the Spirit of God in amazing ways. He was known as a magician in their words, which meant he could heal people and stuff. But his life and his ministry, it was all about the love of God, and that the love of God really was for everybody. And people love to hear that. Why wouldn't you want to hear that? Because a lot of these people were also poor and were told that they were poor because of something they did, or God just didn't care that much about them, et cetera, et cetera. And so for them to hear from this guy who obviously has so much God wrapped around him, saying, no, God is love, and God loves you deeply, unconditionally, and uncontrollingly, that was pretty profound stuff. So Jesus went from day labor to packing out an amphitheater. And then it stopped. And it stopped like this on several occasions. Because Jesus was a very honest man. And he didn't stop at that point where the crowds would still love him. He really wasn't the kind of leader that was all about his own ego and all about himself and wanted to make sure he looked good with everybody, didn't want to offend anybody, wanted to make sure everybody loved him all the time. No, that'd be me. But Jesus was very different than that. Jesus was a guy who was willing to call it like it was. And when it came down to his core message about what it meant to be in this way of God, this way of being, which is immersed in the presence of God, kind of swimming in it at all times, he knew that the way to do that required a giving up of ourselves, a letting go, a sacrificing ourselves, our control on everything, and just choosing to abide in the presence of God. And so that's exactly what he called for. And he said it in different ways. A lot of times he would use language like, if any of you really want to follow in the way, then pick up your cross and follow me. And as soon as people heard that, it wasn't like, go down to the jewelry store, pick up your cross and throw it around your neck and, adorn yourself with some cool jewelry. That wasn't at all. It was pick up your symbol of execution used by the Roman government at that time and follow me. In other words, lay your life down. And at that point, almost all the time, the crowds just dispersed because they didn't want anything to do with that. How quickly things can change. How quickly things can change, even for Jesus, even when so many things are happening in and through him, how quickly things can change. Well, Holy Week is no exception. He comes in riding on a donkey with his fan club, cheering for him, saying types of things that we would only say for a king. They love him. But just a few days later, everything changed. During the week, he teaches in the temple. He holds some temple leaders accountable for their greed and their self-serving nature, and they're neglecting the poor and a range of other things. And before you know it, things change. We're not exactly sure on the night, but we think it's when Jesus is having Passover meal. At least that's one theory. And as he's having this meal, he breaks bread with the disciples and shares a cup, and this is all in line with the Passover meal. And he kind of gives it a new framework, and he says, when you eat this bread and you drink this cup, I just want you to remember me. Remember who I am. Remember what I'm about. Don't forget me, is kind of what he's saying. And that would have been a difficult night for him, because he knew already at that table was one of his disciples who had already sold him out. He had already cut a deal to give his location away, and he even excused Judas from the table that night. And he knew that Judas was leaving that dinner party to go tell the temple guard and the leading priests, the leaders of that day, where they could find Jesus. And it grieved him. So after dinner, Jesus and the boys went back to camp. They were camping out in what we call the Garden of Gethsemane. It was an orchard, olive orchard, I guess, or olive grove. And so they're there camping out under cover of night, and Jesus knows what's coming, and he asked the disciples to stay awake and pray with them, but they all ate too much turkey, I guess, and so the tryptophan was starting to mess with them, and they couldn't keep their eyes open, but Jesus kept on praying. And the way the story goes is he was praying so hard that he sweat drops of blood because he was so stressed out, because he imagined just how bad that night was going to end. And it was bad. It was really bad. It was worse than bad. Judas shows up with the temple priests and their guards. They arrest Jesus. They slap him around. They take him, have this mock trial for him, find him guilty. The next day, they take him before the Roman authorities. They don't really want to deal with him. They have him beaten pretty good, and then they bring him back, and he is beaten way worse than he should have been, beyond recognition. And in a very strange thing, there's a little more detail into the story, but in a very strange thing, Pilate decides to be democratic. And so he's got all these Jewish people that are there for Passover, and he gives them the choice, gives them a vote. And whoever gets the most decibels, they must have had a decibel meter back then, but whoever gets the most decibels in their cheer, that's the one who is going to get the big prize. And so he asks people, do you want Barabbas? And a few people cheer. And then he says, do you want Jesus? And the decibel meter just goes crazy. And Jesus is the big winner. And the thing he's won is execution by crucifixion that day. And so they beat him up a little bit more. They make him carry a cross, which is this really heavy wooden contraption. He's so weak by now, he can't make it. And so they make some poor dude carry the cross for him. He was just a bystander. Now he's part of this piece of history. And Jesus is in agony. They hang him on the cross. Some of the temple priests are there to mock him, spit on him, hurl insults at him. It's getting toward the end of the day. He's got a couple other guys that are next to him, and it's getting late. And, strange things happen here that we need to talk about because, talk about how quickly things can change. He comes in as, wannabe king, or not for him, but his fans want him to be. And now he's ending his life as an insurrectionist, being crucified for his crime that he didn't commit. And you got to look at Jesus and you got to wonder, how do you respond to this? What do you do with this? What's a guy like Jesus do when things change like that and the world is turned upside down and it's so bad all of a sudden? What's a guy like Jesus do? When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane the night that he was arrested, he's praying his heart out. And the thing he's praying is, God, I don't want to do this. Get me out of this mess. I don't want to drink this cup. Make this cup pass away from me. But at the end of his prayer, through his tears, he ends his prayer saying, but not my will, but yours be done. In other words, I'm going to trust that I am in your love no matter what happens. And it's not that I think, God, that you want me to get arrested. It's just that I understand that if your love is truly that uncontrolling, and that means you're not going to come in and save the day all the time like I wish you sometimes would, because that can't work in the way the world works. And if you're truly uncontrolling, that can't happen. But I know that even if it hits the fan, I'm not apart from your love. And so your love is life. That's where I find my strength and my identity and my hope and my future. And so I choose you. And even when he's on the cross, he says some crazy stuff. He's up there, he looks at the people who put him there, who are hurling insults. And in his prayer, he says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. He's praying for forgiveness for these people because he recognizes that if he is immersed in the uncontrolling love of God, if that's what is about him, then his heart, even in that moment, is graceful even toward his enemy. It's amazing and unbelievable. And then at the very end, the very last thing he says before he dies, as he says, into your hands I commit my spirit. So even then, in his agony, he knows he's not alone. And he knows that he's deeply loved by this God. We're in one of these moments where we desperately need to learn this mode, this methodology, this way of being that Jesus found that gave him so much strength and peace. Because for some of us, this is the hardest thing we've ever been through, and we are terrified. And I'm sure that there are some of us that are tempted and probably have prayed prayers of, get me out of this hell. And our primary reason for faith is, I just want to be free from this. Let this cup pass. And the truth is that we're terrified, and God hears our prayers. He hears our heart. He hears our lament. And God is with us in our lament. God truly is with us in our pain and in our suffering and in our unknown and our terror, because that's who God is. And some of us may be cutting deals with God. Like, hey, God, could you wipe out this, thing sooner than later so I can get back to work and save my company, or just have a paycheck, or get back to work, or whatever that thing might be. And we're making deals like, okay, God, I'll go to church more, or I'll pray more, or I'll be a better person. I bet there's a lot of people that are cutting some pretty big deals with God right now that make Congress's CARE Act look like chump change. But the reality is, this is not how God works. And again, God is not going to judge us for these prayers because he understands where that's coming from. Again, it's coming out of our pain, our insecurity, our fear. But there's a bigger reality at play. The way of Jesus says that even though life might suck on occasion, it doesn't mean that God's love has left us, because it can't. You don't need to pray for God's love to come down, because you're already swimming in it. If grace were an ocean, as the song says, we'd be drowning in it because of its depth. And that is a wonderful thing. You and I are in this moment, and we're in it together. By the way, this giving ourselves over, this sacrificing ourselves and trusting ourselves to choose to abide in the presence of God is not a giving up. Don't hear it that way. Jesus was truly faithful all the way to the end, and he did whatever he could all the way to the end. And so we need to be faithful in this time together, in loving God and in loving others, by respecting the distant stuff, by staying at home as much as possible. Not because it's going to shorten the duration of COVID-19, but it's going to limit the number of people who die by COVID-19. So when you are choosing to obey the law on this, you are choosing to minimize the number of people who die by this. It is an act of loving your neighbor as yourself. You may be healthy as a horse, but that doesn't mean other people can take what you've got. And so that's why we continue to do this kinds of things. But even with that, we still know that at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we are immersed in the love and presence of God. And that is what gives us hope, because that is what gives us life. And so maybe right now, this week, you're really feeling it. And you're hearing the news that this isn't going to go away soon, and this horrible reality is going to continue. And so I hope that you'll hear the gentle whisper of God, just like Elijah heard in the silence, just like Jesus heard in the Garden of Gethsemane, just like Jesus heard again as he's hearing his breath dwindle on the cross. I am with you. I am with you. I am with you. And I love you. I love you. I love you. It's as if God is saying to us, I know the pain you're going through, and I hate it. But I am with you, and I will give you strength, and I will welcome you into my arms. I will shoulder you. As the prophet Isaiah said, there's another thing that can change quickly. As Isaiah said, this God of ours gives beauty for ashes, strength for fear, gladness for mourning, and peace for despair. Even our emotional state and our emotional outlook can change quickly. It can change as quickly as a prayer of surrender, a prayer of giving ourselves and our hope back over to God and just saying, God, I'm going to do everything I can to be a part of what you're doing, to heal the world of this thing, but I'm giving myself to you and trusting myself to you because I can't control anything, and I want to still be tied to life and love, and that's who you are, God. So as we end our time together today, I want to give you a prayer which is familiar to many of you. It's a prayer that we hear all the time at CrossWalk Community Church, many times a day, through the many support groups that meet in our halls. And it is the Lord's Prayer. And let's end our time today with this prayer. Let's say it together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So folks, 2 last words before I let you go. 2 things I want you to do. One is maybe as soon as today, when you're done watching this, or sometime this week, I want you and your household, if there's more than just you alone watching this, I want you to go find a rock that's at least the size of an Easter egg. And you can make it as big as you want. Well, maybe not as big as you want. You want to be able to carry this thing, okay? And between now and Easter Sunday, which is next Sunday, I want you to paint this thing up in as bright springtimey of colors as you possibly can, as if it was perhaps the most obnoxious Easter egg you could possibly create. What I'm wanting to do is to make some rocks that represent hope. We're going to call them hope rocks. Hope rocks. And my idea is, or I don't know if it's my idea, but the idea is that we'll create these things collectively. And next Sunday for Easter, I want you to take a picture of this with your phone, and I want you to upload it to Facebook or whatever social or Instagram or whatever, and I want you to hashtag it Hope Rocks at CrossWalkNapa. Hope Rocks at CrossWalkNapa. And it would be really cool just to flood the internet with all these signs of hope. And if you got 3 people in your household, then I want to see a picture of all 3 of you holding your personal hope rock. If you're a family with kids, I want everybody making a hope rock. And once we're all back together again, hopefully sooner than later, we'll bring our hope rocks with us. And we will create a Hope Rocks garden at Crosswalk on campus somewhere. We'll figure that out depending on how many rocks you got. And I'm going to tell you, if your artwork sucks, we might scrap the whole thing. So do a good job, would you? So we're going to have hope rocks that we're going to create. So I want you to do that this week and plan on taking a picture of that sometime this week and uploading it on Easter Sunday as I described. And we'll send some stuff out in the Crosswalk Connection about this as well. And then the other thing is an invitation to you. That this Thursday evening, it's called Maundy Thursday. It is a celebration or a remembrance of that final supper, that last supper that Jesus had with his disciples. I would like you to join me on Facebook Live for communion. It's going to be a very brief service, a very simple service, but it's a time we can collectively come together and be together. You have to supply your own cracker and your own juice. I don't really care what you're drinking. I don't really care what kind of cracker you have or whatever that looks like. I won't be able to see you. I'll have a pretty tame cracker and a pretty tame glass of something. And I will lead you through a brief service, which will include some music that fits, some words of scripture that fit, and then together we will celebrate and remember Jesus in that moment together. Okay? All right, until then, so that's 7 o'clock Facebook Live on our Facebook page. I will see you then. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you later this week. Take care.